Hello. Recently, I was discussing about the connection between neuroimaging methods and behavior, concluding with the result that I read in a publication by Marek et al. 2022, that in order to that connection be really plausible, we need to have much larger data sets, so we can draw accurate conclusion from that. But today I became aware of one publication which is exploring on animal model, meaning rodents, and finding that some specific processes in the brain, but not considering neurons, but microglia, to have connections with impact that early adverse events in childhood can actually change behavior. I wanted to connect this finding with several other information from literature that I have from before in order to elaborate on that. Can that really be understood as a confirmation that what they found really has impact on behavioral changes? So let's begin. I want to connect here several things from the past of psychiatry to demonstrate to you that this new finding can actually be plausible and bring more light on something we didn't understand that well before. The thing is that even Freud started his observation and his theory with saying that early childhood actually determines a lot of your personal adult life. That might have connections with this, because in history of science it was many times that some theories were completely dismissed but later found out to be actually true. And here I'm going to mention this study first in Neuroscience.com. The study titled Early Stress-Induced Impairment of Microglial Pruning of Excitatory Synapses on Immature CRH-expressing neurons provoked aberrant adult stress responses. It was published in Cell Reports today. Much of neuroscience and study of brain diseases has focused on the brain's neurons. This study highlights that in addition to neurons, other brain cells, and especially immune cells, play crucial roles in brain health care and disease. Neuroimmune interactions are novel. So we already know that early development is dependent on genetics, but also on early events which happen during that primal period in your life. The thing is that there are many people reporting that some events actually had much larger impact that we can comprehend. For example, I was listening to testimonials and people who are professional therapists, especially for childhood CPTSD or complicated PTSD, which is usually occurring in people who experienced some maltreatment and neglect as very young kids. Although it is not so clear to which extent it can affect your adult behavior, because it is very complex with a lot of variables that can impact the whole picture. In some people that leave the trace, in some people it doesn't. In this research, which is led by Jessica Bolton from Georgia University, they actually examined early life experience effect on later behavior and microglia and absorption of micronutrients, and they find out that has effect. I have some objection here, because I know that majority of neuroscience projects with animal models are funded, but it is a question in what extent we can really translate that to human behavior, because human behavior is very, very complex and unpredictable concept. Because, for example, from the stories of survivors of very adverse effects, we know that some of them actually are resilient to that, and some of them show that all later life is affected by it. So we simply don't know. Researchers who are dealing with complex PTSD, the names like, for example, Bessel van der Kolk and many colleagues of his, actually find out that early trauma have disruptive influence on somebody else's adult life. Not only mental health, but in first take, physical health. whole physiology. This is not novelty. But from another perspective, another publication came to my mind, which is TOKUDA et al. From 2019. They actually applied artificial intelligence approach to the data of people who are having serious depression. And they find that the most severe form of disease is, without mistake, at people who have three different risks. First is early childhood adverse events, something like neglect and maltreatment. Second is some familial history, meaning probably genetics. And the third, so-called diastasis, meaning that they have some kind being prone to symptoms of depression, which is also not new. I think that when I'm reading today many scientific publications, this is something like putting in scientific phrase something which is common knowledge, because we already heard about that long time ago. And sometimes I'm even wondering whether people who are actually throwing a lot of money on research, which is using animal model to translate to the behavior and not giving money to working with actual patients who have really severe forms of disease, need to justify that money spent. So I would like to hear your thoughts on this problem, because I think it's important.